I'm James Kotecki. You're in the C-Space studio, and here with me is Brian Lesser. He's the CEO of GroupM North America, the world's largest media investment management organization. Welcome to the studio, Brian.
Thank you, James.
So you kind of have a macro view of things and how the industry and how media and marketing and advertising is going. What are you thinking about for 2017?
Well, there's a couple of big trends going on in the media space and the advertising space. One has been around for several years, which is the fragmentation of audiences or the fragmentation of media. With the proliferation of many different channels, devices, social media networks, it's becoming harder and harder for advertisers to reach their consumer with a consistent voice and a consistent conversation. So that's a trend that we've been dealing with over time. The other is that with millennials, there's sort of a rising cynicism towards advertising. Millennials don't necessarily understand the bargain that you need to see advertising in order to get great content, right? Because there's so much great content that you can get in an advertising-free environment. So in 2017, what we're focused on is how to use data and technology that comes from all of these disparate sources of channels, devices, et cetera, and unify them so that we can have a conversation with consumers that doesn't feel like advertising. It feels like content or information that they can use. Because that's very valuable to consumers, and that overcomes the fragmentation of the audience, and it also overcomes the cynicism towards advertising.
Yeah, as an older millennial myself, and the definition of millennial changes quite a bit, actually. So, first of all, what's your definition of a millennial?
Well, you're a millennial.
I am. I was born in 1985, so I'm on the older end of it. But there's also
right.
millennials who are still in college.
Yeah.
I don't really feel like I have much to do with them. Do you feel like there's a difference between younger millennials, people that are in college right now, as far as how they look at advertising?
I think, unfortunately, we tend to lump a lot of different groups into the category of millennial, and I actually think that it's somewhat misunderstood, because when it comes to the advertising business, I mean, there is some cynicism towards big brands and advertising, but what people don't sometimes talk about with respect to millennials is that they value quality information, true, transparent, authentic information more than any other demographic or psychographic, and really that's the key to understanding not just millennials, but the future of the media business and the future of the advertising business is how do you impart information in a way that's not intrusive, in a way that feels very natural.
That's a great question. How do you impart information like that? I mean, what are some of the ways that you come at me with an ad that doesn't feel like an ad?
Well, I mean, there's a few ways. I mean, one is through content, right? I mean, and not just sponsored content where you see a logo next to content, but where brands are naturally infused into the content that you're watching. The other way is to give you information that feels much more like traditional advertising, but give it to you when you need it. So if you're shopping for a car, you actually want to know more about cars. You want to know more about local dealers. You want to know, how a car performs in, certain kinds of weather conditions. If you happen to be looking at the ad while it's snowing outside, wouldn't it be great if we gave you information about how that car performs in the snow? Wouldn't it be great if we changed the background of that advertisement so that it was consistent with wherever you live or whatever environment that you're in? So I think one way is to make advertising feel much more like content. We're not going to get 100% of all of our advertising messages to feel that way. So the other is when we actually do serve you an advertisement that feels more like an ad, to make sure that it's relevant to you and it's that information you can use.
Talking about creating great content that happens to be an advertisement or a marketing message, it seems like that's still very much the province of human beings, right? Because we talk about how much data is underpinning everything that we're discussing, but at the end of the day, a smart human or a creative person needs to take that information and actually make the creative part.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think, I would never downplay the need for creativity, but I would take data over creativity almost every day in terms of understanding massive audiences and understanding how to break down those audiences into individual interactions. So yes, you can see a 30-second television advertisement that is beautiful film, that is inspiring, that moves you to tears, and that's very, very valuable. But we also need to make sure that we're reaching you on Facebook and and Snapchat and Pinterest and all these other places. And I would take data over creativity to do that any day. Now, there is a marriage between the two, and there's a lot of bad advertising that uses data badly. The best example of that is you go shopping and you put a pair of sneakers in your cart, and then you decide not to buy them, or maybe you decide to buy them, but they're still following you around a week later.
Yeah.
That's a bad use of data. But there's lots of data that we can use to change the context of the ad, to change the information in the ad, to change the creativity of the ad, and that you can scale. You can scale that to many millions of people.
You're talking about fragmentation right at the top of this interview. That fits right into that. And I wonder, is the role of the creative then to kind of give the algorithm a whole bunch of different options that the algorithm can then kind of rearrange into different parts depending on the viewer?
Yeah, yes. There's still the concept is still important. The message that you're trying to impart, the macro concept behind any given advertising campaign or any brand. But when you break that down into how do you deliver messaging within that context, that's where data does its job.
So are we totally done and in the past with the kind of big nationwide campaign that is designed to get people talking, even if they're not, even if it's not right in front of them? I'm thinking about, an especially well-crafted video advertisement, for example, might be something people proactively share, and there becomes buzz around it. Or often, if there's a funny commercial or a really bad commercial that's bad in a funny way, people might talk about that and discuss it. Is that over, or is that still an aspect of what marketers need to be thinking about?
It's not over, but in the past, what we would do is we would create a 30-second advertisement or a 60-second advertisement that would run on television, and then we would drape all of the other media activity off of that. That's not necessarily the right way to go about it anymore. There is still tremendous power in television advertising. In fact, it's still the best mass reach vehicle. It's the best way to generate awareness. But now we need to be thinking about creativity and advertising in a much more granular sense, because what runs on TV doesn't work on Facebook, doesn't work on Snapchat, doesn't work in other environments. So we need to think about the audience, define what inspires them, what's going to move them to purchase, and then we need to design creative execution and media strategy around each individual channel.
So we're here at C-Space, which is at CES. What are some of the ideas here that have been inspiring to you?
Well, there's a couple things. Artificial intelligence is sort of everywhere on the floor, from the automotive category to more traditional consumer electronics. In the media business, that's very important to us. The digital advertising industry is 20 years old or so. We've done a tremendous amount of work over the course of those 20 years, and especially in the last 5 years, in terms of ingesting data and understanding how to use the data to serve the right ad to the right person at the right time. But those algorithms that we use are somewhat static. Now with artificial intelligence, actually our systems can learn and improve, and not just improve the creative that you see, but do a better job of understanding how do we amplify these audiences and give our advertisers an advantage in terms of acquiring new customers and new audiences. So that's one. The other thing that I think is really interesting is the launch of the Amazon Echo and now Google Home, because I think this opens up new opportunities for us to advertise in the home, or more accurately, to bring a shopping experience into the home. We've been talking about the Internet of Things for a long time. The problem with the Internet of Things is everything was disconnected, right? You had a watch, you had a refrigerator, you had a activity bracelet, whatever it was. Now with things like Google Home and Amazon Echo, you might have an operating system to connect all of these things. And through voice activation, you might actually be able to interact more seamlessly with brands and products. So, those are a couple things that I think are really interesting. How we use artificial intelligence to improve advertising, and how we actually take the shopping experience into the home via this new operating system.
And I imagine when you're using one of those voice assistants, you could have a situation where it's actively suggesting, if you say, buy me some socks, it's suggesting the kinds of socks that are advertisements effectively.
And we're actually talking about a generation after millennials. I have 3 kids, and I can tell you that they don't know how to search without using their voice. They would never think about picking up, now they're small, but they would never pick up a phone and type into a search engine. They speak, and that is their method for searching. But that's going to turn into, and they already do this, they want a certain song, they talk about it. When they want to see a certain program on television, they're going to talk to the television, it's going to happen. When they want to add something to their shopping list, they're going to talk to that. So, so I think that is a generational shift, and we in the media business and the advertising business need to think about how advertisers can take advantage of that.
Do you think media and advertising is leading the charge in terms of the business or the business side of artificial intelligence and some of the stuff that we've been talking about, or are they still catching up to where others are? Because I mean, if you think about Google, which has been doing this for a long time, it's been the ads that have been driving that all this time, and that's artificial intelligence being used for something like that, or algorithms being used for stuff like that, has really driven some of this industry for a while. Where do you see it?
Well, I mean, I think that there's as much data in the advertising business as there is in any other industry, if not more. And I think we're at the very early stages of artificial intelligence. And you shouldn't confuse the algorithms we've used in the past, which are static. It's essentially considering many different data inputs, how to combine them, and how to create an output, to artificial intelligence, which actually learns over time and improves. So I think we're at the very early stages of how to apply artificial intelligence across many, many businesses. But as I said, because there's so much data available in the advertising business, I really do think that we will be on the forefront of that.
Great. Well, Brian Lesser is the CEO of GroupM North America. Thanks for joining us in the C-Space studio.
Thank you very much, James.
I'm James Kotecki. Keep it locked right here for more great C-Space studio content.